Second week of organized team activities is underway. Players are making differences. We want to know who are the top 5 players to watch at OTAs. We're going to tell you right here on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. It's another day at OTAs, and we have some top 5 guys that we need to discuss. Who can make an impact? What do we want to see? What are we looking for? And we want to know what you're looking for too, because as you make us your first listen, which we very much appreciate it, we appreciate some comments in the YouTube comments section. Let us know who you're watching as well, because we are free for you every day of the week on YouTube and on all the platforms that support the audio. Clearly, like, sub, and hit the bell on the YouTube so you see it all as well. We do use visuals now a little bit more than we have in years past. If you missed my conversation with Matt Derrick yesterday, we use some of that as well. So you want to go back and check that out. And remember, we are here 5 days a week. We very much appreciate you. We're going to get into this topic because it's really keen for me right now as they start to really spool up on what they're doing at OTAs. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, where you can see my latest piece on Monday is going to be about what's going on with the league in terms of streaming services and what's going to impact the way that we watch ball games. You can also check out RGR Football.
And I'm Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. There's a lot to talk about when you start looking at OTAs, what it means for the players, and what it's going to mean for this team in general. I think that there is a lot you can take away, and there are players that you want to get an idea as to how they've adjusted from one year to the next.
Absolutely. You want to go first, or you want me to lead it off?
I'll let you go ahead and go first, but I do want to say, if you want to text us, please text us at 816-357-8781. This is a new service that we are offering all of our listeners. You can join and you can text us directly, and we will be able to respond to you. This is going to be something that we will have a lot more information coming to you once training camp hits, but it's something we're kicking off now, and there will be some exclusive content there.
Okay, the number one thing that I want to see in OTAs right now, selfishly because I love it, is on the defensive side of the ball, and is what I think is really the conundrum of how they're going to make some of these free agency acquisitions work. It is Charles Omenihu for me. Right now, what we see from short video clips, pictures, etc., from what I hear, a lot of like outside linebacker type maneuvers. You see him in drops if you get a chance to take a good look. You see him moving away from the ball, not necessarily pass rushing. And I know that this is the passing portion of the camp. You're not really bringing a full pass rush, so you want to work on some other skill sets. That makes perfect sense. But for me, Charles Omenihu should line up as an edge and should reduce down inside. I don't see him standing up and walking off the line of scrimmage. So I find it very peculiar why you would be spending that time. And so the observation that it brings to me is I need to see what their plan is for him. They're probably experimenting right now. But that's the number one thing is I want to see what's Charles Omenihu going to do, because that tells you about Frank Clark. It tells you about George Karlaftis and how they're going to align the defensive front this season.
Well, and I think that one of the other things that needs to be pointed out is one of the guys from the 33rd team actually had an article out today, I believe, that talked about all the different incentives that players have. Omenihu is the guy that he had on the Chiefs. And the one thing that stuck out to me is in order for him to get his incentives, he has to have 65% of the snaps on defense. So that's a lot of snaps for a defensive lineman. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing they're looking at using him in other ways, just trying to get it to a point where you can use him in multiple different sets. And you're right, they are experimenting with him. And I think that's the right move right now. You figure out what you have with the player, and you try to figure out what he can do and what he can't do now, and then you can really kind of apply it once you start getting into training camp.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, and the one guy I want to watch right now, is Sky Moore. And it's not necessarily because he wasn't used much last year. It's more of how much more of the offense does it seem he feels comfortable with? How much more are they moving him around? I'm not worried about him going in and catching passes. He's got that covered. It's how much are they moving him around to different positions? How much are they using him in different ways than they did last year? You're not going to see a ton of that until training camp, but you're going to see signs of it right now. And it's a question of whether or not he can step up. If he steps up and is able to contribute a lot more to this offense, it's going to be a lot it's going to be a huge deal for this offense.
Yeah, expectations for both, I think, are what we're searching for at this point, right? Is A, how high is the bar for each of these players? And B, can they get there? What is OTAs going to show us? And I think for both of them, it's about ascension. Now, Amen Hughes played well. Sky played really late, obviously. First touchdown of the season in the Super Bowl, contributing in ways that maybe we didn't expect. I think that's a reasonable bar to set to see just what kind of leap you can make. We do talk about second-year players in particular, in Sky's case, being able to make a big leap into their second season. Wide receivers are a little bit different just because there's still that volume. So I'm really keen to see exactly what the usage is. And I think what ties into that, and Matt hinted at it yesterday, folks. If you didn't see my conversation with Matt Derrick, go back and check that out yesterday, as he's got eyes on the ground that only the beat reporters get. For me, it's who takes up the slack in the kick returns, punt or kick itself. And that, I think, allows you to set the bar a little bit more accurately for what Sky needs to do.
Well, and I also wonder with the new rules, how is it going to change how the Chiefs and how teams attack returns? Because at this point, now it's, you can fair catch it and get the ball at the 25-yard line if you're inside the 25. So on punts, that's going to change how teams play, and that's going to change how teams want to go about doing things. So how is that going to affect what they're going to do, who they're willing to put out there and put back there? Maybe you're going to see multiple different returners at both those positions because you have somebody that you just want to go out there and have them just do, fair catches, and you have another guy that you actually want to try to return. That's something that's going to change this season.
And there's going to be some plays that come off of that. I'm looking forward to it. Dave Tobe will be creative, but that's just our top guys.
I just want to say real quick, it was interesting to me. Every single special teams coordinator was against the change. But they made it anyway.
Opportunity for big plays. So, it makes it too easy to not try. But I have a feeling we won't be seeing that in Kansas City. But, hey, everybody has an option. Those are each of our top guys. Who are the rest that we're looking to make an impact? Who we want to see? Who are the top 5 guys we want to see impact from right now in OTAs? We'll get to the rest of the list here coming up in a second, because right now you can make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs and get your no sweat first bet. Here's the deal. Very similar to the old deal, but you guys are going to love this because you make a first bet that loses and you still earn bonus bets. But now it's up to $2,500 in bonus bets you're eligible for when you make a first bet at FanDuel that loses. There's no better place to get in the action, especially for these playoffs, than America's #1 sportsbook, and that is FanDuel. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and get that no sweat first bet for up to $2,500 back in bonus bets when your first bet loses at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's sports betting partner for the NBA, MLB, and NFL. As I look around and I take this roster for what it is, and I take the question marks for what it is, the next thing that I want to see is on the offensive side. Somebody's got more than just be in the right place at the right time. I think it has to be one of 2 players to back up Travis Kelce and give him some rest, to not push him to his limit as we look to elongate his career. We talk tons and tons and tons about Jody Fortson, and I'm still pulling for him. But I think the guy that's got to step up more right now because he's got more roles to play is Noah Gray. I want to see something now that shows that he can hit those under drags, that he can chip, that he can be a little bit more McKinnon, a little bit more Mike Burton, and do a more well-rounded H-back role that doesn't have to line up in line. I want to see more from Noah Gray.
That's going to be an interesting one. I do agree with you. I think that they need to figure out who's going to be that guy that can step in and give Kelce a little bit of rest. And maybe it's both of, Jody Fortson and Noah Gray. We've talked about both of them. We've talked about Fortson ad nauseum. The one I'm really curious about, and I'm going to flip it over to the defensive side, is I really want to see what they're going to do with Drew Tranquill. I look at what they brought him in for, and I love that they told him he wasn't going to start. They weren't going to just give him a starting position. So where does he line up? Where do they move him around to? How do they use him on defense? And again, I understand a lot of this you're not going to really see until training camp, but you're still going to see some aspects of where they really think he is and where they think he can fit when we get reports from media day as to where you have players that are moving around in different places. Is he going to be a guy that maybe brings, Nick Bolton off the field in packages? And I'm not talking on a regular basis, but is it possible that there are some things that they want him to be able to do to be able to step in and be the green dot? And the other thing with that is you look at all the scenarios with Kansas City. Nick Bolton stayed very healthy last year. The reality of playing that position in the NFL is more likely you're going to get banged up. You got to have somebody that can back him up. And if he can step in and be that guy, or they going to keep it with the rookie that was here last year and be that second middle linebacker type?
You know what? I'm going to piggyback off of you. He wasn't going to be my 3, but now I'll make him my 3. And that is Willie Gay. Because Drew Tranquill comes in as a direct threat to his playing time. Let's be real about this. There's only 2 spots on most downs in this defense for a linebacker. Half the time, there's only a spot for 1. So how does Willie react? It's getting to that point. We've seen the one guy in his draft class that was even close to him in athleticism was Isaiah Simmons, who hasn't had a 5th year picked up, even as a top draft pick. Now Willie's got a chance to really step forward and put it all together in this season. We've seen him make some plays. We've seen him miss some plays. We've seen him evolve somewhat, but he hasn't taken that giant leap. That's what I'm looking for this season. I want to see Willie Gay say, oh, you're going to bring in Tranquill? Fine. I'll beat him out anyway, because that makes this defense that much better.
Well, and it's a contract year. So as our friend Therese Paler would like to say, contract year goes undefeated. I do think Willie Gay is going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out, see what he's able to do, and see how he's able to stay on the field or maybe not stay on the field. Kansas City brought Tranquill in for a reason, and if it's just to push Willie Gay and you get better out of Willie Gay, then I'm okay with that. They didn't pay Tranquill a lot of money, and your defense is getting better regardless. And even if Tranquill doesn't play that much, he gives you a quality backup, and that's something you absolutely need on defense at that position, because if any of those guys go down, you're going to be hurting in the middle of the field and doing different things on your defense. So I do think that that's a good pickup regardless. I'm going to flip it back over to the offensive side, and I'm really curious to see what they do with their offensive line. And I know that this is a weird one, but I'm not really worried about left tackle, right tackle. I'm not really even worried about the starters. I want to know who the second unit is. Who do they got and where are they? And where are they? I know we're talking players, but I'm going to go offensive line, mainly because so many of those positions you think are already pretty much set. Allegretti, you think, is pretty much a guarantee to be here. I would imagine the kid from Kentucky last year, Kennard, is going to be here as well. And you have the new draft pick from this year that's going to be here. So you have 8 guys that you figure are going to be on this roster. How do they line up? Where do they line up? Where do they line up the 3rd round pick from this year? Do they line him up at left tackle? Do they put him at right tackle? Where are they going to play him? And how are they going to get this offensive line figured out to have backups? Because while the Chiefs' offensive line has stayed very healthy, and I'm very thankful for that, it goes back to everything else. You have a hole in that offensive line because somebody goes down, you have a big problem.
Yeah, that's significant, especially when we're looking at not being able to really up the number that you take. There's other fish to fry with an extra roster spot here this season. So can they get done what they have been getting done with veterans, with experience, with younger players? That's going to be the transition. Now, that's each of our top 3s. We have 2 more each. Guys, we want to see do something at OTAs. We're going to hit them on the backside of this. All right. Those of you locos out there, and that's what we call our everydayers, for you that are here all the time, we appreciate it, and I hope that you heard my conversation with Matt, because he brought up a really interesting player. And if you everydayers want to get even more serious about specific communication with us and what we're seeing, make sure you text us as 816-357-8781 and get on the text list. I hope that you guys will do that, because it could be a very cool system that we're working towards here. I'm going to give you a name that Matt brought up yesterday that I've been hearing rumblings about, that I'm a little bit surprised at the way that it's gone so far. And that is Nick Jones moving inside at nickel, giving a little bit of competition. Now, we saw him walk out in his first rookie minicamp practice and pick the ball off. So you got to love the way that it starts. But if he can actually grow into a true nickel role, which I didn't foresee coming off of his film. I must have to go back and watch more of it because I didn't get that. But if I can see something from him, that lets L'Jarius be an outside guy all year long. And I think that helps the defense by taking away, at least in a good percentage, the team's number one, because McDuffie and L'Jarius can both travel. Watson and Williams can as well, but neither of them are nickels. So you want to make that nickel kind of the priority because it allows everybody else to do what they do best. So that's one secondary player that I really want to see something from right now.
I was probably going to go offense with the next one, but I think I will switch back over to the defensive side because when I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball, I think I have to say Justin Reed. And it's not necessarily because we know he's going to be a starter, but how much bigger of a role does he have for this team this year? How much more of a leader does he become on this team this year? And that starts at things like OTAs. I'm not expecting him to become a defensive captain. I don't think that that's in the cards. Chris Jones and Nick Bolton are going to keep those C's, and that's fine. I have no problem with that at all. But he needs to be the captain of that backfield because that is going to be his responsibility. He needs to step in and do that. He needs to be somebody that's going to step in and take care of all the young guys. Look at all the young guys he has to play with. He's got a young starting safety next to him in Brian Cook. He's got young corners all around him. L'Jarius Sneed has a lot of years compared to the other corners on this roster. And then you have Brian Edwards, who also brings experience, but I don't think he's going to be playing a huge role other than maybe the third safety role. And even then, I'm really curious to see what they do with him because of the Drew Tranquil signing and the Nick Jones coming in. How are you going to rotate all these guys and how are they all going to play? I'm not saying they don't have roles, but how are you going to piece it all together? Where are you going to have them come in and what are they going to be used for? I'm fascinated to see what Spagnuolo does this year because he has a lot of different pieces that he hasn't had before. And I really want to see Justin Reed take a step forward.
I have to agree with you. And the more interesting twist for me, too, is I do think that Mike Edwards is going to be that nickel, but I thought Shamari Connor was going to work in at some corner. And so far in OTAs, he hasn't. He's been lining up there. So is he got enough moxie right now to jump in and push Mike Edwards? That's going to be a question here in the next couple of weeks. I don't expect to see that today or tomorrow, but as we get closer. And that takes me back to what's the next step. And one position group that I don't think that we've given enough spotlight to is because there's some familiar names. Yes, Colin Saunders has moved away from the defensive line. He's not in Kansas City. You have Chris Jones. We have this contract thing that we're always talking about, right? But in the meantime, despite the fact that they've gone out of their way to build a roster on the defensive front that they feel can move around, can play tackle at times, certainly on passing downs, it's the rundowns that they haven't really beefed up yet. And so you have Derek Nottie back. He's your starter. But we all know what Derek Nottie does and that he does it on first down. Passing downs are a bit of a different story. Turk Warren's coming off of an injury. So the guy for me that I really want to see something from this OTA period, can Keandre Coburn make me forget about Colin Saunders? That's what I need to know.
You kill me because I was actually going to go with Keandre Coburn as my number 5. I really do think that is a fantastic pick by Kansas City this year. I think that he's going to play a lot of snaps. It may not be his rookie year. He may take some time to acclimate to the league, and it doesn't really matter if he takes time because they have guys that can step in and do things this year. Yes, it would be nice for him to be able to take a step forward. But the big thing with Coburn is you're absolutely right. Can he come in and be that pass rusher that can complement Chris Jones and can help you keep some of your DEs fresh that normally you would want to break down inside on second down? On second down, you're probably not going to want to break guys down inside. You're going to want to do that on third down. So can you keep some of the snaps off of some of the defensive ends and keep Coburn on the field? Maybe Coburn makes it to where you use them on third down and some of those DEs get a little bit more rest. I mean, there's lots of different snaps and lots of different things you can do if you have a good defensive front. And I'm talking all 8 guys, maybe even 9 that they're going to have on that defensive front.
Yeah,
so
I have to agree with you.
So when you steal my last guy,
like I do.
Yep, you do. I'll go with another offensive player, and don't get me wrong, I'm curious what they do with Kadarius Toney, and I think both of us are probably pretty curious about Kadarius Toney. But I don't think you're going to see a ton in OTAs. I think you're going to see a lot more in training camp as to how they're going to use him. What I want to see is where they put Rashee Rice. What are they going to do with Rashee Rice this year? how are they going to start him out? How does he start in this process getting prepared for training camp? And is he a guy that can press for a number 2 or a second team type role right now? If he can, that's a good sign for him. If he's with the third team right now, I expect obviously he's going to be on the roster, but they're going to make guys pay. They're going to make guys earn it. So the question is, where does he line up? Is he a second team guy? Is he a third team guy? Where do they have him lining up on the field? Do they have him start moving all around, or are they going to lock him in at a certain position at wide receiver and have him learn that? Kind of like they did with Sky Moore to an extent last year.
It's something that's a work in progress. I think we're going to see everybody kind of all over the place until they get a feel for it. And we all know that there's other options hanging out there too. That's going to come down the line here as we go forward. But as we know more and we see more practice, we're going to have more reaction and start to get a feel for what this roster looks like. So we want to know who are the top 5 guys that you want to see something from as we stand right now on this Wednesday evening in May, getting ready for the rest of OTAs. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Make sure you check out the other Locked On shows for information on the opposing teams and maybe even some of the other sports that you like, NBA-wise. And make sure you text us at 816-357-8781 and get into the action if you would like to have that kind of communication. We look forward to it. We're going to have more for you tomorrow as we preview what is going to come as the OTAs run on. And what can we expect to get out of it overall? What's the evolution of the offense? We'll have more for you next week as well, because we are here, as always, 5 days a week, like clockwork. Thanks for listening to us today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.